2 weeks after Thapelo Ahmad's resignation as a City of Johannesburg mayor, his party colleague, Kabelo Gwamanda, has been elected as new mayor of the city. Gwamanda received 139 of the 266 council votes, beating the DA's Dr. Mpho Phalatse and ActionSA's Funzi Ngobeni. Ahmad resigned a day before a motion of no confidence was brought forward by the DA and ActionSA was to be tabled against him and Council Speaker Colleen Makhubele. There was much debate about whether Ahmad was in fact fit for the job. But will Gwamanda be any better equipped for the task, or is this just another move to strengthen EFF and ANC ties in Johannesburg? Well, political commentator Mapaseka Muroa weighs in. Mapaseka, thank you so much for your time and thank you for joining us on the Weekend Report this morning. Well, I guess that's the question on the minds of a lot of Johannesburg residents. How long is this mayor expected essentially to stay in the position?
Thank you so much for having me, Tokozo, and your viewers. Look, I think what we've learned in South African politics is that the more things change, the more they stay the same. So it's a game of political chess, and what is beneficial for the people or the powers that be, that will be, what is implemented. So I think that they need to strengthen their ties, and that's currently what they're doing, the EFF and the ANC. But only time will tell how long this new mayor will remain in his seat.
Yeah. You talk about, the vying for power and it obviously benefiting the few at the expense of the many. We know that the ANC and the EFF's very specific coalition was about the ANC being able to claw back power and control in these metros across Gauteng, and even going to the lengths of saying that we won't field our own candidates. We're willing to field candidates from smaller political organizations, just so long as it's not a candidate of the Democratic Alliance. It seems to have achieved that. But when we look at the makeup of the mayoral committee, majority of those positions have gone to the ANC. Has it been successful in its main political objective of clawing back that power?
So that's the thing. The African National Congress is trying to maintain the power, to keep its grip on power, even though it has lost its majority. The interesting thing is that they've always said, and they remain to say, that in every single coalition that they are a part of, because they have most of the votes, they will ensure that they have most of the influence, particularly in the seats. So it's quite interesting now that they are fielding mayoral candidates from other political parties. I guess it would speak to the fact that the talks between them and the EFF for the initial plan had failed. You remember that, there was talks of, the African National Congress taking control of Johannesburg, EFF taking control of Ekurhuleni, and so forth. So they wanted to share power in that respect. But the talks had broken down. You'll remember that in the city of Ekurhuleni, Zondile Masina and the leadership that side had said that, look, we will never let a smaller party take control of the metro while we are still here. So it also speaks to the failure, the inability to compromise in that sense. I've always said that, look, it would be a political own goal for the African National Congress to allow the EFF to run the city of Ekurhuleni. Because, what we've learned is that what is good for society, the citizen, might not necessarily be what's good for the African National Congress. The EFF speaks of beneficiation, right? That's their main policy. And so the city of Ekurhuleni has the capacity, the industrial capacity. And so if they really do perform and they implement their policies, that means that they can create employment, particularly in the city of Ekurhuleni. And that will not look good for the African National Congress. And I think the ANC sees that. So this game of musical chairs is not just about power grabbing. It's also about ensuring that where you place the other political party, they perform, but they don't do better than you've done in the past.
Okay, that's a very interesting optic, but won't it hurt the African National Congress in the long run? Already questions are being asked around the mayoral or leadership experience of Kabelo Gwamanda, who was essentially an unknown until he was fielded as a candidate for City of Johannesburg mayor. We've been here before. 3 months ago and some weeks, we elected a Johannesburg mayor that very few people knew anything about, essentially. But of course, being elected means that they have to be afforded an opportunity to occupy that office and commence with their duties, only to find ourselves in a position where Thapelo Ahmad, several months later, is stepping down from that very position. And so, this question of experience is an important one. Yes, we have a youthful individual representing the youth in a very powerful position in the city of Johannesburg, but the question of experience, I think, is one that's burning in the minds of a lot of city of Johannesburg residents. Is that a fair assessment?
Look, I'll start with your first question. Will it hurt the African National Congress? I'll say this. The African National Congress has hurt itself. Right? The decline of the African National Congress has been due to its own self-destruction. The fact that, the ruling party has not implemented its own policies. You've got an ANC on paper, the policy documents, the papers that they've written from that 1992 document that says we are ready to govern. We want to eradicate inequality and ensure that we have a sustainable economy that benefits all, right? So there's been a failure in that respect, and it has self-destructed. It's not so much that South Africans feel, well, there's a better option. There's a better alternative, is that the African National Congress itself has. In terms of experience, yes, experience is very important, but what's more important is that these individuals that are fielded as mayors are the kind of people that are deployees. Because we've got a political system that's predominantly multi-party based with a sprinkle of independence, right? So these individuals are there representing ideas, policies of their own political parties, as well as of that particular coalition. So as much as this individual is young, he should be there to implement ideas. And so we shouldn't actually be able to tell a major difference between candidate A and candidate B from the same political party or from the same coalition, because you are a deployee. You are there to implement ideas and policies that already exist. It's not so much about you as an individual.
Yeah. Our connection is not very good, Mapaseka, but hopefully we can just get through this final question that I have for you. The DA. Some believing that they came out of this the biggest loser, and largely because, at national level, we've got the party's leader, John Steenhuisen, really pushing this idea of the Moonshot Pact, wanting to work with other opposition parties to essentially ensure that the ANC doesn't in any way hold any kind of majority power coming out of 2024, essentially. But what we're seeing at a local government level is, that those ideas aren't necessarily translating down to a local level, that this idea of, the DA working together in coalitions with other political parties is not translating at a local level. Instead, what we're seeing is a DA that's increasingly becoming isolated in a lot of these conversations and discussions. So what is the fate here for the DA? Is it time for it to change, switch up gears a little bit and figure out a different campaign, a different approach to the elections next year?
It's time for the Democratic Alliance to humble itself. That's what it's about initially, because you can't go about in your negotiations, in your discussions with other political parties being arrogant and being imposing. So you need to learn to compromise. And I think that's the key thing here. If the Democratic Alliance can learn that, then they can have better talks and better discussions with ActionSA and some of their partners and former partners. So it's very important that they realize or they recognize that they have not been given the majority by the people. If they were, they would be outright governing. And so they need to learn somewhat from the African National Congress that you need to humble yourself if you're coming into these talks, but also learn from what's happening internationally. Learn from Germany, learn from Israel, and so forth, and how to form a coalition that it's respectful, that you go to the table with humility, and you're able to put the citizens first. But these politicians, I think, they're not really interested in putting the interests of the public first. They want to ensure that they stay in power. So we'll see. Only time will tell.
All right, we'll leave it there for now, Mapaseka. Thank you so much for your time, and thank you for coming onto our platform this morning. That's a political analyst, Mapaseka Muroa, weighing in on the latest developments. A new Johannesburg mayor elected yesterday.